Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. So today I would like to discuss the potential sell of Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. So this is a rumour that has been circulating for a couple of months now, but has really started to gather pace after Eddie Hearn did an interview where he did say quite openly a day ago that he's open to selling Matchroom Boxing, which is an interesting turnaround. It would be interesting to know whether that is going to encompass the whole of Matchroom or just, as I said, the Matchroom Boxing sort of segment of his that division of his company. But the rumours is that he's open to a sell to Turki Alalshikh. Now, it's a strange one because to me, although it feels in many ways like this has come out of left field, I'm not actually surprised in the slightest at this news because for me, Eddie Hearn has seemed from the outside looking in to have one foot out of the door for quite some time now. He hasn't explicitly said it, but in his actions, in the way he's dealt with the media, and really in terms of just how he's come across over the last couple of years, as well as how he's structured his business, at least on the boxing side, it looks like a guy who's trying to get his ducks in a row before he sells. That's how it looks to me anyway. And I'll give you a few examples. Eddie Hearn in the 2010s, the mid-2010s, was very affable, very amiable with the media. He made himself incredibly accessible, and he marketed himself in a way that I had never seen a promoter do before or since. I'll give you an example. I went to a Matchroom show in 2018, and between the fights, on the screens you have surrounding the ring, he was playing, do you remember those no context Hearn clips? They're like sort of 6-second clips, what you'd probably call like TikTok clips now, right? That were going viral of Eddie Hearn saying funny things in interviews. And he was playing those between the fights and everyone was jeering and laughing, and then he would appear on the screen after in the crowd and everyone would be booing, and then he'd be like this and laughing and and he had this way with the public that he built this rapport. He'd managed to go viral multiple times, as I say, through those clips and stuff like that, and he could market himself in a way that no other promoter really has been able to, and he was really able to bring that into the digital age, into the social media age, and he was able to transcend, not just as a boxing promoter, but as a celebrity in the UK. You go and talk to people who know nothing about boxing, they'll know Eddie Hearn. So by doing that and by building that brand, particularly, of course, alongside Anthony Joshua, it's meant that Eddie Hearn become the most powerful promoter in the world. So the last couple of years, really the last 5 years or so, especially since Joshua lost, who is, of course, his cash cow, you started to see a bitterness in Eddie Hearn in interviews. He was a lot more sharp with his tongue, a lot more spiteful. Again, this was a guy who previously, he would have people come in who he didn't know from Adam, randoms with camera phones who'd just come up and ask to interview him. And some of them would be grilling him and asking him, questions that other promoters, even other promoters in the UK, would never answer. They wouldn't even give you the time of the day to interview. But Hearn was doing that, and Hearn was being incredibly accessible and very open. But I want to say really and truly after sort of 2019, 2020 into 2021, in and around that period, he started to become a lot less accessible. He started picking these favourites. He's got this weird clique of interviewers around him now, where other than a couple of decent, I think Boxing King Media is all right. I think the Boxing News guys are all right as well. But outside of that, and again, they rarely do interviews with him. The people he gives his time to and his exclusives to, for the most part, are just cronies who are just going to suck up to him and basically ask him softball questions. And again, it means that the actual experience you're getting from a openness point of view as a consumer of Eddie Hearn content is far worse. You're not getting that openness anymore. He's a lot more, professional. Obviously, he's a professional man, but professionalism would be the wrong term. But he's a lot more deliberate in his responses now. He's a lot more automated. He's a lot more robotic. There's no of that sort of charm and that charisma that would previously come out, where he's bantering and joking and he's giggling with the interviewers, and that's gone. It's all very, yes, I'm here to answer questions, yep, and it's just going through the motions. You can tell it's not something he's really enjoying at all. And when you factor that in as well, you've had obviously the Conor Ben debacle as well. That seemed to really be where I noticed a turning point, in as much of he really soured. You had, of course, Joshua losing, and he seemed to sort of turn a bit there. But after the whole debacle with Ben, the first time in the lead up to that Eubank fight with the failed drugs test, that's where he seriously seemed, to my eye anyway, really become quite bitter and twisted. And he ended up becoming more like the promoters that he'd spent a load of time criticising. And then you have the talent. I think people forget, right? Up until the last, 6 to 12 months, where he signed the likes of Turamoana, and Leo Atang and people like this, and sort of these young prospects coming through at heavyweight and stuff like that, Hearn went through this period where he just stopped signing anyone. I mean, I'm sure I have forgotten people, but over the last 5 years prior to like a couple of these prospects coming through, I'm struggling to rack my brains for any significant prospects he signed. He basically took the Olympic cycle off and let Frank Warren hoover up, and Ben Shalom, or Probellum as well, before they folded. And he basically just couldn't, he seemed to make no attempt to go after really barely any of the GB guys. And then you've got the fact that he just, as I say, just stopped signing anyone. And on top of that, he was letting loads of talent go. Hrgovic went. Usyk went. I mean, there was if you look at that stable, Wardley went. If you look at that heavyweight stable that Frank Warren now has, most of those people are just guys that Eddie Hearn passively let go. So again, when you look at this whole situation holistically, in as much of how he's conducted himself in the media, as well as how he has conducted his business operations, to me, this looks like a guy who doesn't really look like he's been prepping for the future. And if I'm being cynical with a cynical eye, I would say, he's made a couple of signings in the last, year or so. So if he does sell, we can go, well, look, I'm leaving the business in a healthy position. I am signing people for the future. I'm not just leaving you with this, aging roster. And that's almost what you would do if you were prepping to sell. Do you know what I mean? If you were really viably looking in the long term, you wanted to stick around for the next 10, 15 years in boxing, you would have been signing talent routinely for the last 5, 6 years, which Hearn has not been doing. And as I say, to me, that points to someone who's looking at his exit strategy. And even when you look at the way he's manoeuvred someone like Conor Benn, as I've said previously in other videos, if you were really serious about Conor Benn in the long run, you would have taken him the traditional route, area, English, Commonwealth, British, British Commonwealth, you know what I mean, European world. They didn't do that. It was, right, cynical, let's make as much money as quickly as we can. Again, it looks to me like a guy who's possibly trying to get his ducks in a row before selling. So I say all of that to say this potential sale doesn't come as a massive shock to me. What would the sale of Matchroom Boxing look like? Would it just get amalgamated into some kind of like Riyadh season super promoter? I suppose it probably would. Who would face it? Who'd be the front of it? Would it become Dana White? Would Turkey be the face of it? Again, there's a lot to really sort of unpack here. And it's difficult to really know what it would look like. Now, there are rumours that it'd be a minority stake, which if so, does that just mean he's going to be getting bankrolled by the Saudis? Again, there's a lot for us to really unpack, but for me, if it came out that Hearn was just selling the whole business to the Saudis, again, I wouldn't be too surprised, because this is a guy who's looked very bitter in recent years. Very, he to me now looks more like the kind of guys that he used to criticise. And as I say, the appeal of Eddie Hearn, at least from a boxing fan's point of view, in terms of how he used to conduct himself and the accessibility, as I said earlier, that's gone now. Eddie Hearn, I can't remember the last time I even watched an Eddie Hearn interview. Of course, I've seen the quotes and the sale and stuff like that, but I haven't sat down and watched an Eddie Hearn interview for years. Probably going back to 2010s now, whereas at one point they were must-watch content. You know what I mean? It was always funny. You'd always get loads of information. He would be very open with what he'd say, but all of that's gone now. So yeah, to me, Hearn looks like a guy who's pretty jilted by all of this now. And as I say, the way in which he structured his business in recent times, again, doesn't look to me like a guy who's really hedging his bets for the long run. But maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you're going to point out certain prospects he has signed and stuff like that. But I'm talking about those like blue chip prospects. I'm talking about those, guaranteed dead cert household names. Even people like a Ben Whittaker or someone like that. You would have thought Hearn would be all over that. But we're not hearing anything. He never really made any attempt to go for the likes of Ben Whittaker from what we can see anyway. So it's strange. It's strange, but you let me know what you think. I'd be interested to know. But yeah, what do you think of this potential sale? Do you think he will sell? And if he does, what do you think it will look like? I'm interested to know. Take it easy. Cheers.